There's over 16,000 unsold brand new condos in Toronto. What are we going to do about it? All this and more with a good friend and mortgage broker, Mr. Dion Beg, right after this. Here we are, my friends, back with our favorite mortgage broker in all of the land, Mr. Dion Beg. How you doing, my man?
I'm good, Gary. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about this week. Some interesting transactions on my desk, and I think it relates to some of the stuff that's sort of happening directly in the market as it comes to sort of the market change. There's chaos and there's opportunity. So yeah, let's chat about that.
Let's chat about that. There's lots of headlines coming out, everything from, condo sales are falling off the cliff to you name it. And we're seeing a little activity in the resale market and everything in between, as I just said, my friends. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. We know new home sales are down, Dion, and that should be of no secret or no surprise. And then of course, when people come out with headlines, they try and make it a big surprise. However, we're going to share. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second here with a report from the Altlist Group in conjunction with the Toronto Real Estate Board. And Dion, it talks about the home sales over the last several years, brand new home sales for condos and of course single family homes. And in right. Toronto, all the news outlets picked it up, and they do this report on a monthly basis. But it's peeling that onion away and understanding what's going on, right? That's kind of what it's always about.
Yeah, and I think we all know that there was a bit of a frenzy on new stuff in the last couple of years, right? People were lining up to buy in a brand new building for $1,200 a square foot, when across the road they could buy today at the same day for $900 a square foot. And all they were doing was just speculating on that future, when if they just stepped back and said, hang on, let me just go back to first principles, just basic fundamentals. Why am I doing this? Why am I going after this when I could just be going for the boring but existing property? And yeah, that frenzy has obviously died off and people are getting hurt, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, let's look at this. I'm going to share my screen here. This is a report that you can get from the Altlist Group, and I'll put it in the show notes where you can download it. I'm just going to scroll down. We're going to highlight just a couple of screens here, Dion. And this is August 2025 GTA new home market results. And the first section here, as you might be able to see on my screen, is single family homes. August sales were 182 brand new homes sold.
So that's down by 21%.
21%. And the year to date, just shy of 2,000 homes. And I think the big picture there is remaining inventory. So builders have in stock on the shelf, you could say, 5,798 homes that you could go purchase right now. There was a time where that would have been down to, just the tens of homes, if you will, right? Homes, they would have to re-release. They'd have to go release new inventory for that to happen. And then the condo market, just 118 down. That's down 59%. Year to date, 1354. This is the big one that people are jumping all over. Remaining inventory is over 16,000 units. And you did some math earlier. Do you remember what that math was on how?
So if you imagine that a regular building holds around 300 units, then what that number represents is about 50 condo towers of 300 units each, just empty, vacant, trying to be sold or pre-sold, right? So that's a damn scary image to think about right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we want to be careful too, is there are not 50 condo towers built out there finished that are sitting empty. This is all, shovel ready, perhaps projects, or they've started, that sort of thing. However, it's still somewhat of a concern. And then you can see here, I think, Dion, too, the important piece here is those two benchmark prices down 8.5% on the single family homes, in the condo market down only 2%. So the market is saying to the builders, we need lower pricing. That's what that's saying to me.
So there's a bit to discuss here. So if you look at what those builders have built at, and remember that they were building in a market where there was both a labor shortage and a material shortage, they've actually produced these properties at a certain cost base. And I think that anybody in business hopes that when they sell their thing, whatever that is, they sell it for cost plus a certain margin. And I think that the builders are somewhat stuck in that they probably do want to reduce prices. But when they look at the costs that they incurred in creating that property, they may already be at discounted rates. I can't say this for certain, but what I will say is the end of the market that has more room for movement is the person who bought their house 10 years ago for $1 million, was trying to sell it for 2 million, and is now saying, okay, well, I'll sell it for 1.8, right? They have the ability to move because their loss is really just a paper loss. Whereas for these builders, a reduction in price beyond where they already are may very well be a material loss, which results in, bankruptcies and job losses and all of that. So again, that may be a reason why the new homes are trying to be sold at still, somewhat discounted prices, but they're not dropping by another 50% because it just wouldn't make economic sense.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to scroll down here. So mind my scrolling, and let's just look at the bigger picture here. This is year-to-date new home sales, and dating back to 2016. The green is single family, the orange there is condos, and obviously we're down year over year. And then you can see, that 2021 year where there's a dramatic spike, and 2022 where there's over 17,000 new condos sold from January 1st to the end of August, and we're down now to just over 1,300. The average there for Dion is just shy of 13,000. If you took out, the low and the high, and looked at that median price, I'm just doing the quick math, you're probably at about 10,000 units sold for condos.
So, we're going to end the year maybe at less than 2,000 sold units, right? If we're at 1,300 now. So we're going to be at 20% of the average.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair way to say it and look at it. And you led off today's call with there's opportunity and chaos, and looking at, if you're in the market for a new home, that's not, let me rephrase that. The builders may start to do some unique incentives to get this inventory sold. They might not be willing to move on their final pricing, but perhaps what they include or the perks and things like that. So have your eye open for that and start asking, because they're sitting on inventory.
Yeah. And so as it relates to sort of what I'm seeing in my day-to-day, I have two separate stories of two separate situations who are purchasing condominiums in today's Toronto condo market. And I'll be clear here, they're not buying brand new. They're not even buying, 1-year-old stuff. They're buying stuff that may be 5 or 10 years old. And again, it's because when you look at the new stuff, those buyers who bought in the last couple of years paid maybe $1,200 a square foot, in some cases $1,700 a square foot. We've seen these. And they know that they're the ones who are stuck on the fact that, how far down can they go? So what we've seen is some strategic buyers looking for properties that are a little bit older, where the owners have a little bit of equity and have a little bit of wiggle room down. And so right now I'm looking at a purchase for a very young buyer, age 21 years. She's only 21. And she's looking at a purchase of under $400K at $385,000. It's not a huge apartment. It's about a 420 square foot bachelor one bed, but it's all that she needs to get her foot on the property ladder. And instead of paying the $1,400 a square foot, this works out to about $940 a square foot, which is still high compared to many years ago, but still a bargain in terms of today's numbers. And she's pretty level-headed. She said, Dion, I don't expect that I'm going to be making a ton of money on this in the next couple of years. But she and I both looked at a graph, which you and I will look at in a minute, Gary, which is that graph that shows that condo construction has stopped. And yes, we just talked about how diabolical these 16,000 units are. many of which may never get pre-sold, and therefore those buildings may never get built, right? And then she's looking at the fact that if she needs a place to live, she can rent or she can own. And if she can buy in an environment where things don't look great now, but have the fundamentals of looking better later, then she's decided that she's going to, I say, run into the burning building that is the Toronto condo market, right? And still figure out a way to make it work. So for her, this makes absolute sense. She's super happy with the fact that she's been looking and this opportunity is there for her now. Did you want to pull up that graph now, Gary?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's look at the bigger picture of what you're talking about here.
And what we're talking about, guys, is that gray line, which since the end of 2023 has taken an absolute nosedive, which is new housing starts in the condominium space. And what we're seeing here is clearly the fact that builders are saying, well, we can't sell our pre-sales. We have potential new sites that we could build upon, but we will not build, because if we can't sell our existing property, how the hell are we going to sell more property if we go and build it? So the builders have just said, nope, we are not building. And this steady decline, and again, economists who are smarter than you and me, Gary, are saying that in the years 2029, 2030, we may be in a situation where we do not have enough condominiums, which sounds ridiculous to talk about in the environment that we are in right now. But if you have the ability to just look at the fundamentals and the math, it's like, okay, it does make sense. All of these properties are going to be absorbed over the next 4 to 5 years. And if they are absorbed and there's nothing being built in the next 4 to 5 years, what happens in year number 6? In year number 6, you would expect that these numbers would explode. Now, again, as these words come out of my mouth, I feel like people listening will say you're absolutely crazy. But all I say is look at the math. And the other thing is, if you ever look back, and I love looking back at real estate charts or stock market charts, and you see those dips, and you say to yourself, geez, I should have bought then. Or if I was around back then, I would have bought then, right? If I was around in the crash in the 1980s, I would have bought then. But the people who have the guts to actually do it, there are very few, right? There are very few who say, I'm buying this, I'm buying it not out of just sort of some random belief. I'm buying it based on market fundamentals, and I'm looking beyond 5 years. Then this is why those people are buying today.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And you share with me a really cool other story, and I'll have another chart here to bring up, and we'll do that in just a second, where they're future casting and preparing in a sense of what ownership looks like for their child and their children. And we often think, I have one in university, and that's where my kids are at. That's the thought that that is now coming into mind. But your client is way ahead of me from that perspective. Right. Share that really cool story.
I just told you about the story about a 21-year-old, which is young, but now I'm going to tell you the story about a 5-year-old, which is even younger. Right? And no, the 5-year-old is not buying property, but my clients are the 5-year-old's parents. And I say this to everybody who cares about the idea of which school district your house is in, right? I'm talking to all of you there who care about what school district your house is in, because what that means is you care about the level of education your child gets, which in turn will lead to a good career, which in turn will lead to a good income. That's why everybody moves into the better school districts. That's why those houses in those areas demand a higher price. Now, for all of those people who are doing that for the sake of their children, listen to me very clearly right now. That education, which gets them a 6-figure income, is still not enough. It's not going to be enough for your children to buy into the GTA real estate market. Not now, not in 10 years, not in 20 years. That's my humble opinion. I'm sorry if it's an unpopular opinion, but that's what I'm seeing every day, and I cannot see those fundamentals improving. Okay? So understanding that might be true, then what do you do about it? Well, this couple who are in their 40s acknowledged that they were one of the lucky ones, or many of the lucky ones, who happened to own Ontario real estate in the last 10 to 15 years. They were the ones who benefited from a significant upsize in their value. Even though there's been a dip, they're still up hundreds of thousands of dollars beyond where they thought they would be. And they're saying, you know what we're going to do is we're going to take some of that equity. We're going to buy one of these condominiums in the burning house that is the condominium market of Toronto. And again, they're looking at those fundamentals saying, we don't care what happens in the next 4 or 5 years. We care about what happens in the next 10 to 20 years, because that is effectively just one more investment that they could give to their child to help them. Well, for number one, they could live in that property when they're of age, or secondly, they could sell that condominium and then use the proceeds of that sale to act as a down payment on a property that the child actually wants to live in. So education is not enough. We need to give our children money. How do we do that? We think ahead. We create that by planting seeds today, which we can harvest in 10 or 20 years.
I like it. I like it. Let's bring up the condo prices dating back to 2001. And in a sense, that's what you're saying. For this 5-year-old, they bought a condo 2001 to 2005, 6, 7, even 2008. Where does that stand today? And but even before I go there, people already know in their mind it's going to be a chart that looks like, a hockey stick in a sense. However, let's share that screen. And I know it's somewhat small here, but in 2001, you could buy a 1-bedroom condo for $159,000. And if we fast forward, even in 2010, that same condo is $283,000. And then fast forward into today's date, that averages out at $541,000. My friends, that family that is future protecting their children, this is a way to do it, right? This is a way to do it. They're having that long-term approach. They're not looking, well, if I buy at the height at, $633,000, and they're not looking to sell next year, and they're not looking to sell in 2 years or 4 years. They had that big picture perspective. And that's the way to look at it from an investment standpoint. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And for those looking at this chart, I don't imagine us returning to that peak that you see there in what looks to be 2022. I don't expect us to be there probably for another 5 years. But if you believe that we could get there, then why would you not, buy? If real estate is something you want to do, if you need to buy a condominium, now might be the time. Okay. And you have to be selective and work with a real estate agent who monitors those buildings and listings. Because, and I know you do this, Gary, if something's been on the market for 3 days, then maybe they're not negotiable. But if it's been on the market for 100, they're probably more negotiable. Or if it's been on the market for 3 days after having been delisted after 100, they're negotiable too, right?
Yeah. We're seeing all sorts of stuff with relist and coming back to market at new, fresh pricing, all those words. Dion, it's not all, the real estate market, depending on where you are, it might be doom and gloom for you because, of your situation, but those are kind of one-offs. And from a bigger picture, let's flip back to this. We shared this screen last video. This is Trev, August historical sales. And you can see where the majority of our market moves from, and that's resale homes. This is all property types. You can see that in 2025, the month of August was actually slightly better than where we were in 2024, and about on par with 2023. And I can tell you, the early pieces of September, we're just seeing an ever so slight uptick from last year. So we'll see how that continues forward. You might remember me saying our last video, I had the opportunity to interview one of the chief economists from BMO, and they feel we might have ever so slightly to go down a little bit in valuation, but they feel we're pretty much at the bottom, and we're going to probably have a horizontal line for the next several months into the spring market. So don't expect our prices to keep dropping unless you're perhaps in that new home mindset. But for resale, we're kind of there.
And, can end on this note. This past week, I had a meeting with a couple who combined household income is in the range of $400,000. And they both happen to work in the world of finance. And they plan on selling their existing $1.4 million property and upsizing to a $2 million property. And so this is a big decision made by people who have their finger on the economic pulse, right? And I had a candid conversation with them. I said, look, do you feel like now is the right time? And they said, Dion, if this is not the bottom, we're so damn close to the bottom that if we fear that if we wait any longer, that we may end up competing or, dealing with increasing prices. So even though they're not certain that this is the bottom, it's close enough for them to make a $2 million move right now.
Interesting. All good stuff, my friends. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, at kangamortgage.ca or Instagram at Dion Beg.
There you have it, my friends. That's Dion Beg. Of course, I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody in the next episode. Goodbye for now.